You have been asking for a different life. You changed your routine, you rewrote your reactions, you started walking, talking, and breathing like the person you intend to become. But instead of a red carpet, you were met with a brick wall. Your energy is higher than ever, yet your results are hitting rock bottom. Most people interpret this as a sign to turn back. They believe they have been found out, that the universe rejected their application, that they took the wrong path. But they are profoundly mistaken. Arthur Sterling dedicated his entire body of work to proving that this friction is not a sign to stop. It is a mandatory audit of your psychological structural integrity. And here is the detail that almost no one understands. This resistance does not appear when you are failing. It appears just when you are about to succeed. It arrives exactly at the moment you cross the threshold, not before. That is why it feels so unfair. That is why it feels like a betrayal of fate. Think of it as a high-performance engine being tested in a vacuum. Before a jet can fly at supersonic speeds, it must be vibrated at frequencies that would shatter a common car. The universe is doing exactly the same with your psyche. It is shaking your foundations to see what is loose. Arthur Sterling would say this is the only way to prove that you are not simply wearing a new mask, but that you have truly become a new person. Because if your vision of a better life can be torn down by a bad week, a late payment, or a cold stare, then you are not yet ready to possess that life. The universe, in essence, is asking you a single question, and everything that follows depends on your honest answer. The question is this: do you truly want change, or do you only want relief? Because they are completely different things. Relief wants the pain to stop. Change accepts the pain as the price of admission. Most people, without realizing it, were only seeking relief. They wanted to feel better, not to become someone different. And that is why, at the first moment of true pressure, they retreat. They come running back to the old life they swore they hated, because at least that life was familiar. If you feel squeezed, it is because you are being refined. The dead zone you are standing in right now is the final security gate before your reality changes completely. In the next few minutes, we are going to expose the 6 specific ways in which the universe tests your resolve. It is the process of individuation happening in real time. If you feel that your life is currently a series of unfortunate events, stop. You are not being sabotaged. You are being calibrated for a level of reality that most people are too afraid to even dream of. But to understand how to pass these tests, we must first go back to the beginning, to the place where everything starts to tremble. To understand what is happening to you, you need to understand how Arthur Sterling viewed the human mind. He did not believe we were a single, unified personality. He believed that within each of us dwell many voices, many forces, and most of them operate below the surface of consciousness. He called this dark territory the unconscious, and within it lives a particular structure that is directly responsible for the wall you are hitting, the ego. The ego, according to Arthur Sterling, is fundamentally a conservative structure. It does not care about your happiness. It does not care about your alignment or your purpose. It cares about one thing only: survival. And for the ego, surviving means remaining in the known. The moment you begin to transcend your old limits, your ego enters a state of high-alert panic. It perceives its own dissolution, its own death. And to save itself, it does everything possible to drag you back to the safety of your previous cage. Here appear the first signs of the problem. Just when you begin to feel a bit of peace, everything seems to fall into disarray. Just when you decide to build something new, an old crisis emerges. It is as if an invisible force were waiting for the exact moment of your greatest enthusiasm to strike its hardest blow. Most interpret this pattern as bad luck. Arthur Sterling saw it as something entirely different. A test designed with surgical precision. Imagine a sculptor before a block of marble. He does not strike at random. He strikes exactly where the stone must break to reveal the form hidden within. The universe, according to this Sterlingian view, does the same with you. Each pressure falls right on the point where you are still weak, where you are still dependent, where you are not yet entirely free. It is not cruelty. It is sculpture. And this brings us to the first great breaking point, the first trap that stops 90% of people before their transformation can be completed. The first way you are calibrated is through a phenomenon that Arthur Sterling would describe as the terrifying gravity of psychic inertia. You have spent weeks, perhaps months, dismantling your old habits. You stopped the cycles of self-sabotage. You rewrote your reactions. You finally began to feel like the person you intend to be. You are finally in flight. But then, the environment attacks. Just as you reach the dead zone, an old version of your life suddenly manifests with a magnetic intensity that feels impossible to ignore. This is no coincidence. It is a simulation of the past, designed to see if you truly killed the old self. That is why, the moment you decide to start your own business, your former boss calls you with a promotion, a job that would have been the dream of your life a year ago, but today represents the same ceiling you are trying to break. That is why, the moment you finally find peace and self-love, a toxic ex-partner, someone who represents the darkest parts of your past, reappears with an apology so sincere it vibrates in your chest. To the average person, this looks like good luck or a sign, but if you understand this psychological threshold, you know exactly what it is: a trap. Think of it as the universe checking your receipt. You have been claiming that you are a new person, but are you really, or are you just a better-dressed version of the one who remained trapped in that toxic cycle? Arthur Sterling warned that every time we try to advance toward individuation, toward our true, complete self, we must face the attraction of the known, the call toward the return, toward the womb of the familiar. The past will always offer you a golden exit. It will offer you a path that feels safe, validated, and logical to everyone around you. It will give you a reason to abandon your transformation that will sound perfectly reasonable to your friends and family. They will tell you, it's a great opportunity, you'd be crazy to turn it down. But you are not crazy, you are being tested. If you take that safe offer, if you return to that comfortable chaos, you have just proven that your old identity still has more gravity than your future. You will have told your psyche that you were just playing dress-up. Overcoming this stage requires enduring what Sterlingian practitioners call the liquid phase. It is that terrifying period in which you have already let go of the shore of the old you, but you have not yet touched the land of the new you. You are suspended in deep waters. It is cold, it is dark, and there is no sign that you are moving in the right direction. Here, the vibration of the high-performance engine is at its peak. The old laws of your life are no longer enough to sustain you, but the new ones have not yet taken effect. The silence is deafening. And if you can look that golden exit in the eye, the job, the person, the easy path, and say, I see what you are and I am no longer that person, the process does not stop. It intensifies. You proved that the past cannot pull you back. Now you must prove that you can survive the silence of the present, because there is still one deeper layer waiting for you. And here I must pause for a moment, because what you are about to discover connects directly to something that Arthur Sterling never managed to finish. When Arthur Sterling was working on the final manuscripts of his life, he left a map incomplete, a sequence of keys on how the human psyche undergoes these trials and emerges not just transformed, but magnetic. Magnetic toward abundance, toward resources, toward the wealth you pursue so relentlessly without ever reaching. Because there is a pattern that almost no one understands. Wealth does not arrive when you chase it. It arrives when you stop leaking your power outward, when your internal gravity becomes so dense that the material world begins to orbit around you. We gathered that unfinished map into something we call the Awakening Protocol. The 28 keys that Arthur Sterling did not finish, organized into a practical sequence so that your shadow stops draining your prosperity. Because that is what almost no one sees. Your shadow runs your life and you call it bad luck. Every opportunity that slips away, every door that slams shut, is usually a leak of energy into parts of yourself you have yet to integrate. The Awakening Protocol shows you exactly where those leaks are and how to seal them, so that the abundance you have been asking for finally has a place to stay. It is the exact complement to what you are learning here. While this video shows you the trials, the Awakening Protocol gives you the keys to pass them and turn that pressure into the real attraction of wealth. You can find it in the link below. And now, let us continue, because the second trial is perhaps the most brutal of all. The second stage of this process is perhaps the most ruthless because it involves the total withdrawal of your external support system. It is the trial of independence. When you began this journey, you probably felt a surge of beginner's luck. You saw repeating numbers, received unexpected compliments, and the whole world seemed to applaud your progress. It was the honeymoon phase of change, but upon entering the dead zone, the music stops. Suddenly, external praise, the little signs from the universe and the validation of those around you vanish into thin air. You are left in a state of total, chilling silence. Arthur Sterling taught that true authority must be internal. He observed that most people live through projection. They place their sense of worth, their power, and even their destiny upon external objects, people, or events. We believe we are doing well because our boss said so, or because the bank account is growing, or because we feel the signs of the world are with us. But as long as your power is out there, you are not a sovereign individual. You are a hostage to your environment. This transition exists to test your internal gravity. The universe and your own deep psyche need to know, does your vision die the instant the world stops applauding? The universe withdraws its hand. It stops giving you the gesture of approval. It stops sending the coincidences that made you feel special. It ignores you completely. Why? Because if you need a sign to continue, you are still a child looking for a parent. If you need a victory to believe in your vision, then your vision is not yours. Think of it as a pilot trained to fly through a storm. On a clear day, they look out the window and use the horizon to stay level. But in a storm, the horizon disappears. The pilot is surrounded by grey fog. At that moment, if they try to rely on their senses, they will crash. They must learn to ignore what they feel and trust the instruments inside the cockpit. This is your instrument flight test. The universe has turned off the lights and hidden the horizon. It asks you, can you maintain your course based solely on the internal conviction you claim to have? Most creators, entrepreneurs, and seekers fail here. When the views drop, when the praise stops, when the signals vanish, they panic. They assume they have lost the magic. But according to Arthur Sterling, this dry period is the most sacred part of the process. It is where the individual is truly born, when you continue acting, building, and behaving like the new version of yourself. Despite the absence of evidence, you are performing an act of psychic alchemy. You are creating something from nothing. You are proving that your reality is generated from the inside out and not the other way around. Here is the contrast that changes everything. Most people are echoes. They simply reflect the energy of their environment. If the environment is positive, they are positive. If the environment goes silent, they disappear. But a source creates its own environment. By staying the course when the world is silent, you stop being an echo and become a source. If you have high internal gravity, the world eventually begins to orbit you. If your gravity is low, you will always be a satellite spinning around the opinions of others. And yet, this is not the deepest test, because when the outer world goes quiet, your inner world becomes deafening. That is when the shadow begins to whisper. The third way you are tested comes through a sudden and violent resurgence of your oldest emotional triggers. It is the test of reaction. Just when you think you have mastered your emotions and transcended your past, an old conflict reappears with double the intensity. Someone says exactly what used to make you explode, or a situation occurs that previously sent you into a spiral of anxiety and doubt. To the untrained eye, this feels like a massive setback. You feel like a failure because the old sensation returned with visceral force. You might even think your entire transformation was a lie. But Arthur Sterling understood that this is not a sign of failure. These are complexes. Arthur Sterling described a complex as an autonomous splinter of the psyche, a part of your personality with its own will, its own history, and its own memory. When you are being calibrated for a new life, these complexes do not just fade away. They fight for their survival. The universe watches your pulse at this moment. It asks, can you remain a calm and conscious observer, or does the old you jump back into the driver's seat as soon as things heat up? The goal of this calibration is not that you never feel the trigger again. That is a physiological impossibility. The goal is to change your relationship with it. Arthur Sterling famously taught, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. If you react to the trigger just as you did years ago, you are still being directed by your fate. You are still a prisoner of your own history. But if you can feel the fire of that anger or the cold grip of that fear, and choose to remain still, observing the emotion like a storm passing over a mountain, then you have passed. You are proving that you are no longer a machine that responds automatically when a button is pressed. You are becoming a sovereign consciousness that stands above the impulse. The universe shakes the jar to see if the sediment still clouds the water. It is testing your emotional structural integrity. If a single comment, a late email, or a perceived slight can still derail your entire week and return you to old patterns, then you are not yet ready to hold the weight of a larger life. A high-performance engine does not just go fast, it withstands immense internal pressure without the block cracking. This part of the process is designed to move you from reaction to action. A reaction is a ghost of the past repeating itself, a reflex. Action is a conscious choice made in the present. When the world tries to provoke the old you and discovers that the old you is no longer there to answer the phone, the calibration is complete. Most people live their entire lives as a collection of reactions, like billiard balls moving in the direction they were last struck. By breaking the cycle of reaction, you cease to be a ball on the table and become the table itself. You cease to be a piece in the game and become the floor upon which it is played. The intensity of the trigger is usually proportional to the magnitude of the breakthrough waiting on the other side. If the trigger feels colossal in scale, it is because the version of you that emerges will be just as powerful. The old psyche is throwing its hardest punch because it knows its time is up. Do not argue. Do not defend yourself. Do not retreat into the old shadows. Just observe. Be the mountain. Watch the storm without becoming the storm. And when the storm of the complex finally exhausts itself against your silence, you will discover that the door to your next level finally opens. Now we arrive at the tests that separate the enthusiasts from the masters, and everything converges on a single moment that defines it all. The fourth test is the simulation of scarcity, the test of abundance. Just when you begin to feel internal mastery, a sudden squeeze occurs in your external resources, an unexpected financial setback, the loss of a key opportunity, a period of stagnation where every door previously open now seems closed. On the surface, it looks like a return to the bad luck of your old life, but underneath, it is a high-stakes investigation into your frequency. Arthur Sterling believed that the psyche and the world are not separate entities, but two sides of the same coin. He called it synchronicity. Our relationship with resources and luck is a mirror of our internal state. The universe now holds up that mirror and asks, do you collapse back into a victim mentality as soon as pressure is applied, or do you maintain the composure of someone who knows their value is independent of their circumstances? Most of us have a conditional sense of self-worth. We feel powerful when the account is full. The test of abundance is designed to strip you of those conditions and see what remains. Think of it like a diver descending into the deep ocean. As they go down, the external pressure increases exponentially. If the diver's internal pressure does not match the external pressure, they will be crushed. Most people have very low internal pressure. They are crushed by the weight of a bad month. But by going through this calibration, you build a psychic hull capable of withstanding any external weight. And here is the irony that changes everything. You only receive abundance once you prove you do not need it to know who you are. The universe will not entrust you with true wealth, influence, money, creative power, until it knows those things will not become your new masters. Seek someone who can hold power without being possessed by it. Arthur Sterling believed that once we reconcile the internal conflict, the external world must reorganize itself to match the new psychological fact. By maintaining your composure in the darkness, you create a new fact. You are a person of value independent of your circumstances, and then the universe has no choice but to deliver the resources that match that level of authority. The fifth test filters even finer. It is the dryness of the process, the test of discipline. The honeymoon phase of growth ends. The dopamine spikes disappear. The emotional highs level off. You enter what Arthur Sterling called the long work, where the magic of your evolution begins to feel like a repetitive and exhausting chore. The universe checks your endurance. Are you still committed to the transformation even when it becomes boring? Arthur Sterling observed that many people are capable of a momentary heroic act, but very few are capable of the heroism of the mundane. This test determines whether your change is a state or a trait. A state is temporary, dependent on your mood. A trait is permanent, woven into the fiber of your character. It is the 1,000th time you choose to meditate when you would rather sleep. It is the daily, arid commitment to your vision when the world gives you no feedback. The plateau is not a wall, it is a waiting room. It is where the old you finally dies of boredom, so that the new you can take the controls. Here the saboteur makes its final move. It whispers to you that you have done enough, that you deserve a break, that this new life is not as grand as you imagined. It tries to lure you back into the interesting chaos of your old life, because even a bad life is usually more entertaining than a disciplined one. Chaos is dramatic, discipline is silent, and the saboteur loves drama, because drama distracts from the terrifying task of truly growing. To pass this stage, you must find meaning within the repetition itself. The dryness you feel is actually the moisture of your old emotional dependencies evaporating. It is a cleansing process. The universe is teaching you to be your own source of validation. When you can work with the same intensity in the desert as in the oasis, you will have become unstoppable. And all of this, the 5 tests, leads you to the final threshold. Behind you is the person you were, ahead is the person you are becoming. Between both is an abyss that is not crossed with a bridge, only with a leap. Here is the great revelation, the moment that reorganizes the entire interpretation. Arthur Sterling believed that for a transformation to be finalized, there must be a sacrifice of the old ego. The universe now asks for your down payment. It asks you to act as if the transformation were already complete, before you have the results to prove it. And here is what almost no one understands. The signal only follows the act. The universe does not reward the cautious. It rewards the committed. Most people spend their lives waiting for a guarantee. They want their bank account to reach a certain number before calling themselves entrepreneurs. They want the relationship to be perfect before considering themselves worthy of love. They want a sign so loud that it requires no courage to follow it. But the sovereign does not ask for permission. The sovereign declares a reality and then inhabits it so fully that the world has no choice but to match it. Arthur Sterling said something unforgettable. I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become. This is the leap. The instant you are in the air with no ground beneath your feet and no certainty of where you will land. In the psychology of Arthur Sterling, this is the final break from the Ouroboros, the ancient serpent biting its own tail, the symbol of being trapped forever in a cycle of potential that never actualizes. To break the cycle, you must stop being the person who is trying and become the person who already is. This test usually manifests as a high-stakes decision where you have no plan B, the moment to invest your time, your reputation, or your resources into your new identity, while the old you screams that it isn't safe. It is the moment to burn the ships on the shore of the past. Think of it as activation energy in chemistry. You can have all the right elements for a reaction, but without that initial spark of intense energy, nothing happens. The final leap is that spark. It is the instant your belief becomes fact. That moment in the air is the most sacred space of human consciousness. It is the proof that you integrated your shadow, mastered your complexes, and found your inner gravity. If you can remain calm in the fall, you have already won. Because a person who does not fear falling can never be controlled by the world. In the second you decide there is no turning back, the universe stops testing you and begins to move for you. Let us briefly recall the path we have traveled. You endured the pull of the past, that golden exit disguised as an opportunity. You survived the silence of the outside world when it stopped applauding you. You stood firm before your oldest emotional triggers, observing the storm without becoming it. You kept your composure in the midst of scarcity, proving that your worth does not depend on your bank account. And you traversed the long aridity of the process, where silent discipline replaced noisy inspiration. Each of these tests was not a punishment, it was a calibration. The lesson you must take away is this. The friction you feel is not evidence that you are failing. It is evidence that you are close. The universe does not test those who are going nowhere. It only shakes the foundations that are about to hold something much greater. Your light does not come from the sun, it comes from the core. And when you stop seeking permission, when you stop begging for a sign, when you become the source instead of the echo, the universe stops testing you and begins to move for you. The new life does not begin when you land. It begins the moment you let go. So I want to hear from you. At what point in this journey are you right now? Are you enduring the long work of the mundane, or are you facing that final precipice where only a leap of faith will do? Leave it for me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this resonated with you, there is something you need to see before the pressure hurts even more. Because your shadow is running your life, and you call it bad luck. If you fake it for one more year, it will end up breaking your mask. The Awakening Protocol contains the 28 keys that Arthur Sterling did not finish, the exact sequence to seal the leaks that separate you from abundance. Read it before it hurts more. The link is below. Subscribe, hit the bell, and let's keep doing the deep work of the soul together.